Hello there and welcome to The Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson, co-host of the show. Joining me on the couch, as always, parenting expert and my friend, Alyson Schaefer.
Hello, hello.
Hello. We're being very, very nice, cordial, but this is taming the rude attitude. That's what we're talking about on today's show.
If I had $1 for every time a parent said, right? And that's very common. If I talked to my parents the way my children talk to me, or if this is what they're sounding like at 4, what are they going to be like at 14? So I get a lot of people in my office where it really is, it's the rudeness, it's the attitude that ends up being sort of the presenting issue for parents. Very, very common.
Now, when you hear the parent saying that, do you hear the echo of rudeness? Do you hear the similarities in how the tone is when they're telling you?
Well, I'm paying attention for it. I am, mostly so that I can point it out to them. But from a training in Adlerian psychology and knowing my psychology very well, we're always asking the question of what would have to make sense, what would have to be true for this behavior to make sense, and trying to understand it not from the parent's perspective. I mean, yes, I want to understand it from the parent's perspective, but parents only see things from their perspective. And it's very different when you get them to try to step into the world of the child and be more inquisitive to say, what would have to be true to want to be so rude to a parent? And what it turns out is that it isn't random. It's really not random and out of nowhere. That children will only, and I say children or tweens, teens, young adults, we give back the same level of respectful communication as we perceive that we are receiving from our parent. And so where I think there's a big problem in the communication is that parents have a blind spot for all the different ways that we inadvertently are disrespectful to our children. It's not always that we're using a rude tone. Yes, we often do use a rude tone. I'm not negating that. That isn't one of the elements. But there's many things that we do in our parenting approaches, in the way we approach problems in the family, that come from our long tradition of sort of like, I'm the parent and you'll do as I say, and I'm going to take matters into my own hand. And in the way that we approach parenting, we can have quiet ways of disrespecting kids. For example, reminding. When you remind somebody of something they already know, that's a vote of non-confidence. You're saying, I don't trust you to manage. You need me to remind you. I'm sending you a message of not having faith in you. Which, when you're a child and you're sensitive to wanting to impress your parents and show them that you can do right, do good, which is our wiring, and then you get reminded, a kid ends up saying I'm going to do it. Like, why are you treating me this way? It feels rude to them. Now, they'll not maybe say you're being rude back, but what you're going to get back is the expression of that communication, which is then suddenly, you got the little snarly lip and the dropping of the knapsack and and so you see some other kind of tit for tat. As you treat me, I will treat you back. And so it's really at this point to say to parents, are you willing to open your eyes and to be pay attention and listen to your children when they give you some feedback that maybe the way you've been doing things you have not noticed are actually disrespectful to them.
Well, and that's what I love about this show, but I love about the way that you talk to parents and talk to families at home, because a lot of times parents don't understand how to take that step back and see those things. They need the examples. They need the tips and tricks on how do I replace the behavior that I'm doing with a new behavior. And so that's why, a show like this is important, because you tend to break that down and be able to help people with seeing that different perspective.
Because I think one thing that's a differentiator for us is that we don't go about giving advice until we have a good understanding of what the root cause is. So if we take that, say, from a medical model. In a medical model, if somebody has chest pains, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're having a heart attack and that you need to go in and have a quadruple bypass. It could be that they have some reflux. It could be that they've got a blood clot. Like there can be many things that can lead to the outward expression of having chest pain. And so when you have a kid who's rude, same thing. We have to try to figure out, where is this coming from? Because if all we end up doing is putting Band-Aids on symptoms and we don't get to root causes of the dynamics in the family, then you might get a quick fix or a little turnaround, but you really don't get the sea change that we need. So when I'm working with families, one of the things that I'm constantly looking for in all shapes, sizes, and forms of all behavior is I'm looking for mutually respectful relationships. That where relationships between parents and children, husbands and wives, or wives and wives, husbands and husbands, employee and employer, friends, in our human relationships, we don't tolerate being put in an inferior position and having somebody dominate us. And so that can look a bunch of different ways, but being subservient to somebody else is a disrespectful arrangement. And that's a bit of a brain twist in parenting, because we might see it in our marriages where you go, well, yeah, you don't want to be one down from your partner. That's not okay. But when it's our kids, we get confused about the idea that we have this role in their little kids, and we sort of think that respect should just flow upwards. And well, aren't we the parents? Aren't we supposed to make the rules? Absolutely, we're supposed to make the rules. Absolutely, we're supposed to discipline our kids. But the methodology does not need to be disrespectful and demean our children. There's ways to do positive discipline, and this is what we spend how many episodes, 300 plus episodes, giving parents tools to understand what's going on and to load them up with some more of those positive discipline, child guidance ways, so that we don't fray the relationship and our kids want to get along and treat us respectfully as we treat them. And I would say one of the big offenders is that we come from a history of using punishment and rewards. And again, parents will say that I'm just parenting, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just parenting. But if we punishment is, I can change behavior without punishing a child. I'm not saying punishment doesn't work, but I'm saying you are going to get the retaliatory, I'm going to hurt you as you hurt me. Okay. Maybe not right in the minute. Mm-hmm. It might come weeks later when they, give you the rude attitude, or you tell them to come home for curfew and they don't listen, or you want them to get good grades and they're like, no, I'm not going to study. It'll come back and haunt you in some way. And rewards really just do exactly the same thing. They just feel better to parents because you're not really demeaning the child, but you are, in the sense that you're manipulating them. Mm-hmm. You're still saying, I don't trust you well enough to manage your life, so I must, lure you on with whatever it is, praise or money or, whatever, sticker charts, whatever it might be, because that in itself is disrespectful. It says that I don't trust you. It's a vote of non-confidence. So seeing through the lens of disrespect, you can suddenly start going, oh, I didn't think about that. That's actually disrespectful. Oh, I didn't think about that. That's actually disrespectful. Making a kid finish his plate when he's actually not hungry for eating anymore is disrespectful to his tummy, to his knowing how much he needs. So there's a lot of things when, if you put it through that filter, you're going to realize, I'm actually pretty disrespectful a lot. So this may have something to do with where our kids are starting to give us some of this lip and attitude. So I know people don't like to do be self-critical, but how else are we going to change if we can't open our eyes to seeing where we might be running off the rails? Right. And that the change begins with us. If we want to change in our child, we have to start with a change in ourselves. Well,
and it's so interesting because what you're talking about is digging so much deeper into the why.
Yes.
Rather than just, when a child snaps at you and your answer is a snap back, that's also a check, right? That's a quick and easy check of, wait a minute, they sound just like me.
Yes. Now, again, to the idea of investigating around this, it's from situation to situation and from child to child. You might have a kid who gives you all kinds of tone and attitude, but they maybe just finished 4 hours of being on Snapchat with their girlfriend and ended up having like a big blowout, and they're all upset or whatever, and they come all huffy into the kitchen and they're like, who didn't buy milk? Or whatever, right? And you're like, and how was your day?
Yeah.
And that wasn't really personalized about you. That may be that they're just bringing their stormy mood into whatever conversation that they were having. And it doesn't have anything to do with the health and respect level of your relationship. And we have to learn to not take that personally. So I am interpreting situations all the time. And often I'll have to make a decision about whether that was really meant for me and whether or not I'm going to really engage with whether I want to make a comment about that tone or whether I just want to let that go and pick my battles and just listen to the content and I'd say, oh, actually, sorry, milk wasn't on the grocery list. Sorry to disappoint. I'll have to grab some tomorrow. I don't have to go on about, say that to me in a nice voice, young lady, or,
Yeah.
I can just decide to let that go. Doesn't mean I'm raising a kid that's out there being disrespectful to other people or that there's disrespect in our relationship. They're just having a mood.
Right. Interesting question here. I find it very rude that my 4-year-old will not say the basics hello to someone when we meet them on the street. It's embarrassing for me. My husband says that she is just shy. Is this rude or shy? So it's not an interesting question. It's a great question from one of our viewers. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, so again, going back to our psychological principles here, one child could be refusing to say hello because they're shy. Well, I'm going to argue that in just a second. And it could be different for another child. So it's not like I just have like the big book that says, go look up this behavior. I actually have to give you a formula for doing the diagnosis, not the big solution book. So I'm not sure, but I can make some guesses just from my years of working with families. And one of the things we do is we check in with, how does the parent feel in the moment?
Okay.
Is it something that is irritating? Is it something that makes you feel challenged and provoked? Are you embarrassed by it? So when we're going through the diagnoses, we check in around these different emotional states for the parent. So it's not uncommon for a child, for example, that as we're trying to socialize them, and we're trying to get them to say their please and thank yous and speak up and say hello, that parents who make manners something really important to them can often be a little bit more urging. And a child might realize, I'm only 4 years old and I don't have a lot of power in my life. But the one place where I know that I can hold the power and kind of throw my parent under the bus is that it's really important to her that I say hi to Grandma and Grandpa or hi to the people at the door when I answer the door. And I'm just going to nod. Because now she is flummoxed at what to do. And she's a little embarrassed of her impairment. And so you can see that little 4-year-old can be sitting there going like, by doing nothing, I actually can be pretty big and mighty. And nobody can control. And we see this with selective mutism. These kids are choosing, you can't make words come out of my throat, right? So that's a very powerful position. And when you're small and you can't find power in the family in other ways, you make these mistaken bids to feeling big and powerful. So I would definitely say that you want to make sure that you're sharing power appropriately in the family. Not, again, appropriately. I'm not saying equally. I'm not giving the same power to a 4-year-old as I'm giving to a 40-year-old. But appropriate power. So I'd be paying attention to that. But the second thing is, I would just have a little answer for that you want to give your child the opportunity to speak into that hello. And if they don't, I would just move right along. And I might say something so that I save myself from embarrassment, where I might just say something like, well, we're still practicing our hellos and goodbyes or something. And then just don't make it a bigger thing than it is, because then you're really not allowing the child to reach the goal of flummoxing you.
Right.
You're not embarrassed. You moved along, But to the point of the word shy, because I know there's some parents are going like, no, I have a shy kid. I do. I have a shy kid. Kids that are shy, and there are introverted kids. I understand that. And there are kids that are more anxious than other kids, and socially anxious. I completely value and credit all of that. But kids who are shy hold a lot of power in making everybody do things the way they want things done. I mean, it's a mighty stance to say I refuse to talk to anybody. It is a mighty stance to say that I'm going to hold on to my mother's leg and I'm not going to go play with the other kids at the drop-off birthday party. Do you know what I mean? Like they actually, they're very much in control of the situation and getting their way.
Yes.
And they're doing it all under the guise of like, I'm helpless, I can't manage this situation. But they are managing the situation. They're getting exactly what they want by playing shy. And again, I'm saying play. I don't mean that again. That their behavior is pre-conscious. They don't know why they do what they do. They're not being outwardly manipulative, but they are learning how to play the game of life in order to move it in a certain direction.
Yeah.
So,
but it's a different approach, but very similar to people who are just abrupt or people who are rude. And it drives me crazy when people get away with being abrupt because that's just the way they are. You're allowed to say what you want because, well, that's just...
I shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
Right? Shoot from the hip.
No, you're rude.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's...
At some point, yeah. I think people do need to be, when we talk about, again, going back to psychological tenets of Adlerian psychology, we talk about raising people that are socially interested. Socially interested means that you have a care and concern for your fellow person, that you want to get along with your fellow person. So you need to have what we call cognitive flexibility, theory of mind, or empathy, to step into the other person's perspective, to say, when you talk to somebody like that, it lands as if you're being uncaring or that you're being so forthright as to make the other person uncomfortable. Just like being a good hostess is making sure that your guests are comfortable in your home. So if you're with the queen and you pick up your chicken leg, the queen's going to do the same thing to make you feel comfortable so you didn't just embarrass yourself, right? So I think you have to see how you land on people. And so part of, again, this kid who won't say hello, the parent is probably trying to do early training around manners, and the child will get the manners. So much is just from modeling and watching and observing, but it's the forcing of manners and thinking that the absence of them is rudeness, whereas I think there's actually a different motivation that is fueling this dynamic. Right. I don't think she's attempting to be rude. I think she's attempting to undermine her mother's power. So okay. not that that's, it's not great.
No.
But I wouldn't put it under the definition of rude as it appears in the dictionary.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question for you. My daughter is so polite to every other adult she meets, except at home. She is literally a Jekyll and Hyde. Why does she have it out for us? Isn't it funny how people are so, parents just hope that their child in public will display some type of behavior, and then they get home and all hell breaks loose.
You get the worst. I mean, think about that, right? Behavior has to be understood in the context in which it's occurring. And your child in the classroom, your child off at a restaurant, hanging out with their friends, those are different social constructs, different social fields in which the behavior is happening. So what I like to say to parents is, congratulations, you've raised a great kid who clearly knows good social compunction and comport and gets along well and knows how to make friends. You've taught them well. They choose not to use any of those skills with you. Right. So there's a difference between can't and won't. There are some people that, have skills deficits and have emotional regulation issues, in which case you're going to see it everywhere. They're going to have troubles in their friendships. They're going to have troubles in the classroom. They're going to have troubles at home. But when you find that it's only at home and nowhere else, you have to know that the trouble is residing in the parent-child relationship. And so it is directed at the parent. And I'm sorry, but also remember, you're the most important person in their life.
Yes.
So they're more sensitive to your loving, your caring, your kindness. They're more sensitive to your criticism, your punishments, your rewards, your denigrations. It's often one of those blind spots that, again, parents don't realize, where there might be a child that's hurting, where the child is sort of revenging against with their rudeness, is there can often be a feeling that a child is preferred. And many parents will say, no, I love all my children the same. And I know that may well be the truth for the parent, and it may be the way they're trying to parent, but there can be subtle forms of favoritism. Like maybe the parents are all, PhD professors, and the first child in the family is getting all A's and is on the dean's list, and the second kid has a learning disability or something, where they're like, no, I can never get ahead in this family. I don't have the qualities that my family cares about. Or if everybody in your family is really athletic and you're more like into your games, and everyone thinks gaming's a waste of time and you're going to rot your brain, and are you still on that thing? And you're like, this is like my favorite thing. Like, so there's things that we inadvertently do that like I said, I have to snoop and find those things in counseling, but I'm just giving you some ideas of some places where you might look that are common in families where we're really like, why has this kid got it out for me? Is there favoritism? Is there a family value that they don't meet? Why is it so hard for them to show up?
So how do parents find that? And you've given great tips, and certainly counseling is a great start. But what should they do to kind of look out for these things?
Believe it or not, it comes down to listening.
Okay.
Right? A lot of times when we listen to our kids, we either listen and then fix the problem. Right? They start complaining about their teacher and whatever, and they're like, well, why don't you hand in your homework? Well, why don't you get started earlier? Like, we just jump in and try to make life clean for them, right? And they're like, they're not coming to you for a solution. They're coming because they want to have a gripe fest. They want you to understand their pain. They want you to know what's going on in their world. So we jump in way too fast with the fixing. So just hold the space and listen to our kids. That makes them feel valuable, makes them feel important. A lot of times they solve the problem on their own if you let them air it out. But also to listen and to not be defensive. So what ends up happening is they'll say, like, you like her more than me. And you go, that's ridiculous. I do not. That's not helpful, right? No. They've given you some important information. You want to sit with that. So you want to say, so let me see if I understand this right. So in our family, for you feel like you're loved less than your sister. Is that what you're telling me? Ow, that would really hurt. So what they're telling you is their truth. It is their truth. And so we need to be able to say it back and to say, I heard it, I hear what you're trying to let me know. And you can say, I don't want that to be the truth. I don't want anyone in the family to feel that they're less important or less loved than anybody else. I need to work on how I can do that better. Help me know where these transgressions come up.
Well, and that wording is the perfect response instead of just, no, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Validating those feelings is an answer, and it's still saying, no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But validating the experience and the emotions of the child.
My kids used to say to me, like, I'd go like, I'm not mad. And they're like, Mom, like, you're saying out of your mouth you're not mad, but like your face is saying you're mad. And you have to know that kids are wired differently than adults. They are incredibly sensitive to body posture, tone, facial expression. They are looking for acceptance. They are looking for love and validation to be shone back at them. And so it is true that when we say small little things that we don't think are such a big thing, and we're kind of like, oh, come on, that was just one flippant comment. But we can make one flippant comment that can really stay with a child for days and weeks and things they can't get over. And we're not going to know that unless we hold that space for them to say, I'm still hurt that whatever, you don't think I'm good enough to get the lead role in the play.
Right.
Or whatever.
You just mentioned that your facial expression.
Mine particularly.
Yes, yours. Yours. Your face is saying mad. One of the tips that you, and we have posted at the bottom of the screen, is use a signal to help identify when tone is getting rude. So you can have a certain facial expression that is a good thing.
Yes.
It is a good reminder that you are heading down the wrong path.
Yeah, well, because, even kids don't hear their tone, to be fair. We often are a little bit tone deaf to our tone. And so in our family, and I recommend people give this a go, make up your own signal. But what we said was, we decide the level of respect that we want in this house. It's something we choose. We choose. And the environment of being in a respectful household actually feels better. And everyone agreed. And we didn't like when we were, cutting each other up and using sarcasm and getting nippy and whatever. And it was like, well, then we decide. We this is where we want it to set, and everybody has to work on that together. So if I would have tone and I wouldn't hear it, right? Or my daughter would have tone and she wouldn't hear it, instead of correcting, because kids don't like to be corrected, parents don't like to be corrected. I want to keep the words out of it. I just want it to be like a little, kind of a quiet little nudge. And so we just had like a little signal. Or we came up with this word level 3. Level 3 was like, take it up, like You know, the whole, like, when they go low, we go high. It's like level 3, like, take it upstairs. Like, let's be our better version of ourselves here. And the thing is, it was the kids who came up with the signals. It was the kids who came up with the level 3 phrase. But it's because we talked about it at a family meeting. And so, you know, we've had other shows on family meetings. In my Honey, I Wrecked the Kids, one of my books, there's a whole chapter at the end. You can Google it online. You'll probably get all kinds of advice on family meetings. But it is one of those ways of sharing power. And so it is a way of respectfully bringing kids into power sharing, designing the family and making agreements together, solving problems so that you don't have to do punishment and rewards. It solves so many things. So it was in the context of the family meeting that my kids recognized, you know, I'm guilty, they're guilty, we're all guilty, we all want this together. And they came up, you know, with that idea, and it worked. And it's it was a real game changer for us.
Well, and it's interesting because I'm glad you explained it further, because in my mind it was just a signal to let the kids know that there was,
no.
and I love that it goes both ways.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the moment that you see your kids make that signal, you can't then react to it, right?
Right.
You need to understand that it comes from a place that's the perception.
Yeah.
And it needs to be changed.
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting, when kids get dysregulated, their perceptions change too. And it's not uncommon for a kid to say, the teacher was yelling at me. Or, you know, you go to walk them to a timeout and they go, ow, 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 you're hurting me. And sometimes you think they're just being like dramatic or sensitive or whatever. But the truth is, in a sense, they are more sensitive when the amygdala gets hijacked and we go into fight, flee, freeze. We actually, a neutral face will be seen as a grimacing face. And a tone that's neutral will be heard in a more aggressive, angry kind of a tone. So there is changes to our perceptions when we're upset, and our kids are particularly sensitive to that. So again, I would, you know, take the correction, because you want to model that you're a team player here as opposed to being defensive.
Yes.
But again, you can come back and say, you know, I'm so glad you told me. That's, again, I'll keep an eye on that, but not my intention. I really didn't hear it.
Yeah. You did mention Honey, I Wrecked the Kids. Want to just...
Heck, I wrecked all mine.
That's not what it's about.
No, it's supposed to, yeah, although it you know, the subtitle, sorry, I cut you off here. When yelling, screaming, threats, bribes, timeout, sticker charts, and removing privileges all don't work, which are all these other disrespectful pieces.
And all the things that you've mentioned, every single one of those things in today's episode.
Yeah, right. And and they're all going to get you kids that are, you know, going to either covertly evade you, or they'll be in your face, rude back.
Right.
So passively or aggressively, overt or covert, you're going to get a kid who isn't going to cooperate with you. So, so this is really the book about doing that diagnosis piece and then loading up the toolbox with some of those alternatives like the signal and all those things. So this is really a great book for that positive discipline approach.
And the books, information about the books, your podcast, social media, topics, how people can find you is all available on your website.
AlysonSchaefer.com.
I wanted to get that thrown in
Thank you.
before
I appreciate that.
head to the end of the show. Thank you so much for all the information and the content of today's show.
Thank you for being so polite all the time.
Not all the
a pleasure.
time, just in this last half hour. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. She's giving me the signal. We'll see you next time on The Parenting Show.
Maybe not.